What happens when my dream plane becomes the target of one woman's absurd rage? Brace yourself. This battle against entitlement is about to take flight in the most unexpected way. Just as I began to recover from my initial shock, I could hear the sound of Sam's footsteps behind me, his easygoing demeanor seemingly in contrast to the chaos brewing at the hangar. "Ethan, I thought you were picking me up at the terminal," he called out, his voice dripping with confusion as he spotted Karen brandishing that baseball bat like it was some sort of talisman against bad vibes. I couldn't blame him. I was caught between a surreal and comedic moment. It was like watching an absurdist play come to life. I could already hear the trailer voice-over. One man's getaway turns into a battle against entitlement. But this was real life, and the absurdity of it all felt utterly mind-boggling. Karen's face twisted with righteous indignation as she swung her bat toward my jet, narrowly missing the wing by inches, probably cobwebbing her anger with intense precision. "This hideous aircraft, with its garish colors, deserves to be taken down a peg or two," she bellowed, as if it were her duty to rid the world of what she deemed inappropriate extravagance. I nearly chuckled at the notion that a woman known more for slinging complaints than for solving global issues felt equipped to judge anything about my plane. It wasn't like I had the audacity to tell her that she needed to fix her haircut, which actually looked like it was styled by a blender. Admittedly, my inner mean critic peeked out, but I quickly stashed that thought away. "Karen, you might want to put down the bat before you regret it," I shouted, hoping that painting on my bravest face could somehow disarm her. But she just flicked her head back, adjusting those obnoxiously oversized sunglasses as if I were a pesky fly buzzing about her glorious front lawn. "You don't get it, do you? The world is full of things that clash with the aesthetic I've created in my life. And this," she sneered, lifting the bat higher, "is my way of righting the wrongs." I glanced at Sam, who looked like he was trying to suppress a fit of laughter while simultaneously considering whether or not to brave the dilemma and be my voice of reason. "Righting the wrongs, huh? Tell me more about this creative aesthetic." Sam chimed in, his tone dripping with sarcasm. With every syllable, it was as if he was a comedic gladiator, ready with his witty quips and perfectly timed interruptions. Karen didn't seem amused, but her irritated expression only seemed to fuel his comic fire. "If this is the right kind of aesthetic," he motioned dramatically towards my jet, "I'd hate to see what the wrong one looks like. I can just picture it. Mismatched flip-flops with socks while binge-watching daytime television." In the face of her wrath, we were emerging as an unlikely comedy duo. My mind raced through the absurdity of the moment, trying to soak in all of this while Karen continued to rattle on about privilege and responsibility, as if those words held the power to dismantle my existence. I felt as if I were in the middle of a bizarre flash mob where entitled individuals invaded my personal space, swinging metaphorical bats at my happiness. I mean, really, who would take a baseball bat to a plane over a simple aesthetic judgment? With each beat of her rant, I could practically hear my sanity slowly unraveling, like a cheap sweater snagged on a hook. Finally, with sheer audacity as my guide and an insatiable need for closure, I raised my hands and shouted, "Enough with the theatrics, Karen. Your entitled rampage has gone far enough." Whispers of disbelief spun through the hangar as moments hung in the air like a paused sitcom scene waiting for the audience response. For a moment, everyone stood still, eyes wide. Even Karen herself seemed momentarily caught off guard by my unexpected defiance. Did I just stand up to a Karen while she wielded a bat? Was that the sound of applause I could faintly hear? Before I could even bask in my newfound bravery, the door of the hangar swung open with a swoosh, and in walked a man in a tailored suit, his aura booming with authority. "Madam Wexler, what's the meaning of this ruckus?" The air in the hangar shifted dramatically. As if the clouds had parted for the sun, Karen's demeanor transformed from that of a bull in a china shop to a deer caught in headlights. "Senator," she stammered, looking as if she had just been told she was under arrest for wearing such a hideous suit. Was it really possible? Could this unhinged woman have just tried to pummel my plane with a baseball bat in broad daylight, completely unaware that a senator held the title of my beloved jet? The absurdity of the situation escalated exponentially, and I leaned closer to Sam, whispering, "You couldn't make this stuff up if you tried." As the senator's brow furrowed, Clearly trying to process the absurdity unfolding before him, I couldn't help but wonder, would Karen ever live this down? Would this battle against airplane aesthetics finally make headlines? Only time would tell, as the bizarre world in which we were now tangled turned even more outlandish. Who knew what would happen next? The senator stood in the doorway as if he had just arrived on the scene to save Gotham from an impending villain twice removed. In my chaotic imagination, I half expected him to pull a cape from his tux and ascend into the stratosphere, fingers poised to point at Karen, and declare her public enemy number one. "Miss Wexler," he began in a voice that bore the gravity of a commanding officer inspecting his squad. "What the devil are you doing?" I couldn't help but snicker. It spoke volumes about Karen's life choices, when her parade of rage was abruptly cut short by a leader whose authority was undoubtedly more reputable than her bat-wielding theatrics. To my surprise, the word devil sounded almost affectionate coming from him. Instantly, Karen transitioned from aggressor to victim under the senator's gaze, her lip quivering as she pointed a trembling finger toward me. This disgrace of an airplane. "It ruins the neighborhood," she spluttered, her righteous indignation crumbling like a dry cookie under pressure. I could see the senatorial gears turning in his brain, expertly weighing whether to side with the middle-aged Karen or a youthful dreamer willing to throw jabs with the faint promise of sanity. The moment hung in the air like an unfinished story, and I couldn't suppress the grin that crept over my face. How could Karen possibly think this was going in her favor? Sam shifted beside me, rehearsing a bubble of laughter that seemed too dangerous to unleash. "Senator, you must witness how retribution is being dealt to this poor aircraft merely for its audacity to gasp, exist," he interjected, flailing his hands for effect like a well-versed lounge comedian. The senator turned his head sharply to Sam, only to find the grin on his face infectious rather than intimidatory. He caught a flicker of amusement beneath his stern exterior. Perhaps this tension wasn't as somber as it first appeared. After all, it felt thoroughly wrong to watch a grown woman lash out at a plane with the fervor typically reserved for superhero battles. "Mrs. Wexler," the senator continued, his voice softening now that the jarring freshness of the situation began to fizzle out, "do you honestly feel that demonstrating your displeasure with minor nuisances this way reflects a sense of responsibility?" Karen looked like she had just swallowed a cat. A part of me wondered if we would witness her melt into a puddle of self-righteous goo right before our eyes. I could practically hear the collective gasp of someone aghast at the idea that a quivering Karen could ever be wrong in her approach to life. Laughter bubbled within me, and, unlike the last few minutes, I felt at ease and reminded that absurdity could often drown out entitlement. "Thanks for standing up to her," I whispered to Sam, as if he had just achieved some grand act of social justice. "You should have seen her scoff at aesthetics. I mean, I get wanting a pleasant atmosphere, but this isn't a community garden. It's not even a front yard bake sale." Sam nodded enthusiastically, eyes glimmers of mischief yet retaining his unwavering kindness. I also mentally noted she looked like a cruel art critic brought to life, potentially sketching out the itemized destruction of your jet. But never fear, we have a senator on our side. The way he effortlessly blended sarcasm with genuine camaraderie made the chaotic moment seem exponentially lighter, and I could almost feel my stress melting away like a popsicle left in the sun. With an unfazed flick of his wrist, the senator directed his attention back to Karen, who fumbled with words and attempts at regaining her composure. "Mrs. Wexler," he said, suppressing a gentle chuckle that threatened to escape, "while I applaud your commitment to aesthetic standards in your privileged realm, I'm afraid you must consider that people express their success in various ways, such as owning a private plane. Maybe, just maybe, that's part of the diversity in our community? Could I get an award for best plot twist?" Here was a senator savagely defending my plane against the 12-car suburban onslaught of Karen's reality. Just when I thought Karen couldn't sink any lower, she gathered herself with all the tenacity of a chicken trying to fly. "You can't let this stand. It's an affront to all the good people in this neighborhood who appreciate refined tastes," she screeched, her voice carrying more frantic notes than an anxious symphony conductor about to premiere at a bad venue. I looked at Sam, and he winked, as if to telegraph, "This is a performance art piece, Ethan." I couldn't help but feel like an unwitting participant in a tragicomedy that would surely be told around town for years to come. One man's plane became the stage for a petty power struggle. As the senator maintained an air of measured authority, I decided this was my moment of triumph. "You know, Karen," I interjected, suddenly feeling emboldened, "what's truly an affront is your inability to recognize that tastes differ." I didn't pick the gaudy colors for my jet expecting everyone to applaud my choices, just like I didn't expect you to turn into a full-on bat-wielding ballet dancer because of your judgments. The gathered audience of onlookers seemed to lean in closer, yearning for the twists that were now unfolding. I had no idea where this was heading, but one thing was clear. Karen had become the unexpected star of our impromptu drama. As we stood there in the cold hangar, the air thick with tension and absurdity, I found myself chuckling inwardly. What bizarre things could happen next? Would Karen pull out a giant gavel and declare, "I sentence you to a lifetime of mediocrity"? Or would the senator process the absurd proceedings into a new legislative plan for alleviating conflicts of aesthetics? Either way, both Sam and I were right at the front row of this comedic tragedy, and I savored the idea that at that moment, my misfortune had transformed into ridiculous entertainment. Who knew the power of a plane and a bat could serve as a catalyst for unexpected hilarity? The air crackled with tension as I squared my shoulders and locked eyes with Karen, ready to claim my corner of this circus of absurdity. "Listen, Karen," I said, my voice drowning out the buzz of curious onlookers. "You've elevated your melodrama to a level I didn't realize was possible outside of a soap opera. So, news flash. Just because you don't understand the allure of my gaudy colors doesn't mean you get to unleash your inner demolition derby queen on my plane." The crowd of spectators behind me practically gasped in unison, and I could practically hear Sam's inner cheerleader shouting, "Yes, you go, Ethan." Karen's blue eyes widened, as if she had just witnessed a unicorn fly past her. This is exactly the kind of insensitivity we're dealing with in this neighborhood," she exclaimed, dramatically clutching her tailored blazer as though I had just punched her in the gut instead of delivering my unsolicited critique. "People like you think you can just throw money around and decorate the skies like they're your personal canvas. It's wrong." With that, she made a flapping motion with her arms, as if trying to lift herself up or maybe take flight, like one of those gaudy planes she was so keen to demonize. I couldn't help but snicker again. This might just be the performance of a lifetime. Ah yes, the entitlement of elitism. Who knew you were a scholar in social issues? I shot back, adopting a mock sophisticated tone like I was narrating a serious documentary filmed in my backyard. "Well, allow me to enlighten you. Art is subjective, Karen. Maybe next time you could consider putting that energy into a neighborhood potluck instead of turning my aircraft into a piñata." I leaned back, palms spread wide, as the collective gasp from the audience turned into tepid laughter. Oh yes, I could feel the tide turning. This was becoming an all-out roast of the resident Karen, and I was delighting in every moment of it. Just behind me, I could hear Sam muttering, "Man, if we make it out of this, I'm renaming my cat Batty McFury in honor of the spectacle." The laughter that followed grew, and I could see the edges of my friends' faces morphing into broad grins of support. The senator cleared his throat, drawing attention back to him as he cautiously navigated this outrageous battlefield. He took slow steps toward Karen, and I could see him weighing his words like a seasoned diplomat trying to balance the scales of chaos and reason. "Mrs. Wexler," he began, "while I admire your enthusiasm for local aesthetics, perhaps it would be beneficial to redirect that energy toward resolving community disputes in a more civil manner. Maybe we can establish a forum for discussing these grievances?" Karen finally blinked, the blinds on her entitlement momentarily opening to permit the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the reigning queen of this bizarre kingdom we had found ourselves in. But before I could pat myself on the back for sparking the flicker of common sense, she exploded. "Absolutely not!" she roared, sound waves threatening to warp every ear in the vicinity. "If we allow specters like him, with their flashy planes and haughty attitudes, to continue unfolding their tomfoolery, we'll be doomed to an eternity of aesthetic travesties. I demand accountability." My eyebrows shot up to my hairline. She was taking it to a whole new level. Accountability? For a plane painted in flamboyant colors? You have got to be kidding me. The senator looked like he was slowly aging before our eyes, his patience wearing thinner than a slice of cheap deli meat. Respectfully, Mrs. Wexler, he replied, this isn't a matter of Congress or constituents. It's a bad reality show unfolding before our very eyes. Ethan's choice of plane may be eccentrically colorful, but the real issue is your reaction overshadowing the actual conversation we should have about community standards. The senator smiled softly, a glimmer of camaraderie breaking through the absurdity. I couldn't help but give him an encouraging nod, appreciative of how he was trying to bring the chaos to heel. With the heat of battle cooling, a hush fell over the crowd as they collectively held their breath, momentarily caught in the wave of confusion washing over Karen's thoroughly confused face. The look she gave me was like that of a prized wrestler who has just realized they lost a match due to an epic blunder, a blend of disbelief and defeat. You're all letting him get away with this. She spat, her indignation cracking, but the edge of vulnerability felt palpable. This isn't over, she added, her desperate swing of the bat earlier utterly forgotten. As the audience erupted once more into chuckles and whispers, visions of a neighborhood without Karen echoing sweetly within them, I felt a surge of triumph pulsing through me as I replied, voice unwavering. Oh, we're just getting started, Karen. You're about as welcome as a snowstorm in July around these parts. But now you've got the floor. Let's hear your grand plan for aesthetic rectification. The crowd erupted into laughter, and I could feel the overwhelming joy at having flipped this entire farce on its head. The plane stood tall behind me, proudly displaying its wild paint job like a badge of honor. Who knew a bat-wielding Karen could ignite this newfound camaraderie? The show must go on, and I was hopeful that it wouldn't come crashing down when the dust settled for this episode of Civil Disputes Gone Wild. As the laughter began to die down, I could see Karen's expression transitioning from indignation to sheer bewilderment, as if she just discovered that her favorite store no longer carried sequined blouses. You think you can just berate me for having preferences? She sputtered, shooting daggers at my vibrant aircraft behind me. Do you even have any idea who I am? I'm a key member of this community. I couldn't help but imagine her perched high on a throne of entitlement, crown askew from swinging that bat like there was no tomorrow. Now the only thing missing was a floaty host to guide her to a mental escape from reality. Key member? I echoed in disbelief, exasperation curling my fingers into dance motions that would make a seasoned conductor proud. Is that the same community where throwing tantrums like a 5-year-old is acceptable if you're wearing designer shoes? As I threw my arm wide towards the onlookers, the crowd burst into laughter once more, some of whom were starting to bond over their mutual disdain for Karen's antics. My humor felt like rocket fuel to my resolve, as each laugh redirected my nerves into pure comedy gold. Someday, I'd have to pen a poetic tribute to Karen. It would certainly have a dramatic flair. With an eyebrow raised, the senator stepped forward cautiously, as if navigating a minefield of bad decisions. Karen, while I appreciate your passion, this isn't about you, nor is it about Ethan's amusement park on wings, he stated, lifting his hands in a placating gesture. Surely we can reach a solution instead of falling deeper into this melodrama. He turned to me briefly, a tiny smirk playing around his lips as he added, "Not to say your plane isn't colorful enough to be a carnival attraction, my friend." The well-timed teasing from the senator was a breath of fresh air. Perhaps even he recognized the humor in this absurd showdown. But Karen didn't flinch. Oh no, my friends. She stood her ground, clearly channeling her inner lioness, ready to pounce. This isn't about a carnival, Senator. This is about standards. She pointed at my plane and then back at her polished attire, as if drawing a line in the sand separating her world from the garish chaos behind me. We must uphold dignity in our neighborhood. Last I checked, a coat of neon paint didn't scream sophistication. Well, her colorful choices were starting to look even more ludicrous compared to my rolling delight of an aircraft. I couldn't help but mentally record this moment for all to hear. The irony was rich, and Karen was fighting a losing battle in this shifting tide of public opinion. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the back of the crowd, a teen with curly hair and skate shoes. Dude, if your plane screams anything, it's "I'm fun." What's wrong with that? The laughter from that simple statement rolled like a wave over everyone, and I could see Karen's face growing redder than the sunset horizon. "Exactly," I yelled back, spreading my arms wide like a jubilant maestro conducting an orchestra of humorous banter. "Art is about liberation. Who wants to live in a world with beige walls and blandness? Think of the children. What's life without a little chaos? Let's embrace the vivid." Karen's smile turned upside down, shifting her features into a dreadful grimace. "You don't understand," she barked back. "With all this daring color, you're ruining the very fabric of our shared space. I have a vision, and it involves class, not calamity." As she harped, I conjured up an image of her surfing through a wave of colorful paint, desperately trying to maintain her balance when in reality, the paint wanted to claim her. It seemed Karen's vision of class was about to collide with the reality of a vibrant community that embraced diversity, though she remained blissfully unaware of just how out of touch she truly was. As I scrutinized her intricate web of delusions, I noticed Sam leaning casually against my plane, a mischievous spark igniting in his eyes. "Hey, Karen," he chimed in. "If you're so worried about standards, perhaps you should take up coloristic diplomacy? It's all the rage these days." The crowd burst out in laughter again. Sam had a knack for timing that I seriously could have used in my entire life. Even the senator couldn't hold back a chuckle, and I wondered if he would nominate Sam for a commemorative award in public espionage of Karen's chaos. With the situation teetering hilariously on the brink of ridiculousness, I decided it was time for a grand finale. "All right, everyone. We need to settle this like civilized adults," I declared dramatically, as though I were gathering my troops for a heartfelt emotional war. "How about we host an Art of the Community Day? Everyone gets to paint a panel on the plane, and we'll even invite you, Karen. Talk about bringing people together." Gasps erupted from the crowd as they imagined the very sight of Karen's scowling face, painstakingly trying to dip a paintbrush into wild colors. That suggestion could either break her spirit or toss her into a new realm of chaos. Would she catch a paint stroke or just a debacle? Even Karen paused, her wrestling with the potential absurdity flickering before her eyes. "Art of the Community Day?" she echoed incredulously, surely weighing her options like a high-stakes poker game. The crowd watched, breath held, as everyone knew that this event could either blow the lid off or open the door to a brand new chapter for our vibrant neighborhood. It was either a dazzling venture or a descent into tangled paintbrush warfare, and I could hardly wait to find out. Would Karen step over that threshold of entitlement and embrace a new reality, or would this be another chapter in her series of misadventures? The stage was set for round two, as the notion of the Art of the Community Day hung in the air like popcorn bubbles in a sizzling pot. A symphony of gasps and murmurs erupted from the crowd. The entire assembly was riveted, like kids on Christmas morning, half hoping for a hoverboard and half terrified they'd find coal in their stockings instead. Karen's expression morphed between incredulity and outright defiance, her commanding scowl doing acrobatics as it wrestled with the idea. "You think I'll be part of this colorful circus?" she sputtered, her voice teetering dangerously on the edge of a shriek, yet the note of uncertainty rang clear. Was this the tipping point? Would Adventure Karen choose the paintbrush over the bat? The crowd responded with a wave of encouragement, laughter popping like confetti. I could sense them rallying, feeling emboldened by the possibility of colorful chaos and artsy shenanigans. "Come on, Karen. What have you got to lose besides your pristine reputation?" someone shouted from the back, the crowd going wild as parallels to Karen's previous outburst rolled through their energized minds. A whispering wind of camaraderie was brewing, and Karen was right in the center of it, channeling all the possible drama of a Shakespearean heroine caught in a comedic farce. It was incredible. I felt like an energetic conductor, making sure that every note of laughter and joy reverberated in perfect harmony. Determined to win this battle of wills, I decided to weave a grand vision, one that would be hard for even Karen to resist. Think of the fame, the community pride. An entire day dedicated to creativity and inclusion, I proclaimed, waving my arms like a mad scientist, unveiling his latest experiment, a brilliant concoction of color and laughter waiting to explode. Imagine the news coverage. Everyone can see how Karen Wexler, the esteemed community member, transformed this vibrant plane into a collaborative masterpiece, a beacon of artistic expression. I could see the cogs of perception clicking in Karen's mind, slowly derailing the train of her entitlement onto new tracks lined with splashes of optimistic hues. Evidently, Karen was not completely impervious to reason or the sweet nectar of social media fame. A flicker of contemplation crossed her expressive features, only to be chased away by a wave of her classic indignation. "You think a mere paint job will make you the people's hero?" she snapped, her arms crossing defensively like an ancient fortress being besieged. "That's absurd. Do you know how hard it is to maintain an image?" I bit my lip to suppress a laugh. It seemed her outrage was less about the plane and more about her image being compromised. The crowd could see the cracks forming in her confident facade, and I was riding on a wave of momentum, fueled by their energy. Then, out of nowhere, Sam jumped in, the ever-easygoing comedian of our duo. With a wild gleam in his eye, he exclaimed, "Karen, imagine it. The headlines will read, 'Wexler dives into colorful waters, ditches dull image.' You might just become famous for embracing creative chaos." He gestured flamboyantly as he described the front-page features that awaited her, and I couldn't help but chuckle at the animated performance. The crowd erupted into laughter again, fully backed by Sam's comedic genius. Karen's expression flickered between irritation and begrudging intrigue, as if she was weighing the risks and rewards on her meticulously kept scales of entitlement. In that moment of hesitation, I seized my opportunity like a kid snatching the last cookie from the jar. "Let's do it, Karen. The art of the community day will forever be immortalized in all of our hearts and on Instagram." I shot back, rallying my creativity into a mantra of possibilities that could melt the icy edges of her disposition. Plus, who wouldn't want to join a cause championed by our local senator? I gestured toward Senator Doolittle, who had been watching with a bemused, ready-to-strike smirk plastered across his face. The entire crowd joined in. "Art! Art! Art!" chanting like they'd turned into an artsy flash mob, zealously throwing their enthusiasm at her. Karen's blue eyes narrowed, her poised demeanor fraying like old upholstery on a well-loved chair. The thought of abandoning her ideals flickered underneath her surface, uncertainty now battling with that all-familiar entitlement. "Art?" she spat, her voice laced with spiky sarcasm. "You think I'll be reduced to mere paint splatters and community complaints?" But even as she voiced her protests, I could see the wheels inside her head spinning, pondering what potential this chaos could hold. The unexpected thrill of actual community participation danced in the air, and whether she liked it or not, I suspected she was beginning to consider the artistic chaos as a possible path to redemption. Just when I thought the crowd's unity would shatter Karen's immovable will, she surprised me. With a deep breath, the kind that a lioness might take before a showdown, she straightened her tailored suit like she was stepping onto center stage for the performance of a lifetime. "All right," she declared, her voice gaining momentum. "I'll humor this. Absurd proposal. But this has to be rid of any midlife crisis colors." An audible gasp rippled through the crowd, followed by a roar of applause. I could hardly believe my ears. Did we just win? Would she dare throw herself into this puddle of colored chaos? With a triumphant grin plastered across my face, I seized the moment. "Fantastic, Karen. But just to clarify, there will be paint, and it will be colorful. Get ready to unleash your artistic spirit." The jubilant crowd erupted once more as laughter erupted, everyone bursting with shared excitement towards the upcoming community event. In that ridiculous instant, Karen became the unwitting catalyst of the most vibrant escapade I could have hoped for. Would she bond with these flamboyant colors or retreat into her fortress of beige? The spectacle was just on the horizon, and I couldn't wait to see how the art of the community day would unfold. Would this day mark a turning point for Karen, or would it spiral out of chaotic control? The stage was set for a colorful showdown. With Karen's reluctant but startling agreement echoing in the air, I could hardly contain my excitement. The crowd was electrified, a rumbling wave of joy sweeping through them, louder than a firework display on New Year's Eve. Our community art day had just leveled up dramatically. The thought of a middle-aged corporate warrior like Karen Wexler attempting to paint her emotions onto a plane Seemed like the lovably absurd plot twist of a feel-good movie, and I was already imagining the post-event montage set to a catchy pop anthem. Would she nail that first brushstroke or transform the whole thing into a spectacular mess that we'd be laughing about for weeks? Sure, I was optimistic, but this was Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of propriety facing the chaos of community-driven creativity. As the official event balloons floated high in the air like colorful promises, chaos reigned supreme over the painted asphalt runway where the artwork would unfold. The media buzzed around us like enthusiastic bees, snapping shots of Karen's regal posture, which desperately clung to its last smidges of command. They were ready to capture the moment she completely caved to the community spirit, or perhaps when she vaporized into a frenzy of disappointment while splashing paint all over her designer suit. Sam and I set up easels, paint buckets, and sponge rollers, making sure to sprinkle in some glitter for good measure. I mean, if we're going to do this, why not go full art school meets carnival mode? The community members began to trickle in, their smiles wide enough to rival the summer sun, each armed with palettes of colors threatening to explode like fireworks. Karen stood at the epicenter, still awkwardly adjusting her fitted blazer like it was an undisputed protective armor. "All right, let's get this over with," she huffed, glancing at the eclectic gathering of enthusiastic neighbors, the sheer absurdity of which wasn't lost on anyone. "But remember, no neon, and keep it orderly." Her command evoked spontaneous laughter from the crowd. My best friend Sam leaned closer, snickering with glee. "Karen, this isn't an office meeting. You're going to have to loosen up." As people began slinging paint in fluid, vibrant arcs, I decided to take a bold leap. "All right, now that we're all here to watch the legendary transformation of our esteemed Karen, let's kick off by allowing the honor of the first brushstroke go to our special guest." The audience erupted into cheers, rallying around her, coaxing her forward like goofy hyenas, egging on their leader to dive into an adventurous pool of madness. Karen's face flushed a crimson so deep it would rival whatever red paint was closest. I would have sworn she was contemplating whether fleeing back to her office was a valid option right about then. But oh my goodness, the moment she surrendered to the giggling spirits and walked toward the easel, I had to hide my glee. "Just consider how fabulous this will look on your Instagram, Karen," I shouted encouragingly, pretending not to notice the tension in her shoulders easing, fried under the spotlight of color. "Think of the hashtags," Sam chimes in with a grin that could charm the stars from the sky. Karen, to her credit, took a breath, attempting to command the vibrant brush with the poise of a trusty battle general. And what was this? A spark of determination glimmered in her blue eyes. In an instant, she took that much-dreaded plunge, dipping the brush into her chosen shade, a fierce grape purple, and approached the plane like it was a canvas whispering sweet nothings. The crowd collectively held its breath. Was our corporate superhero going to unravel into paint-splattered glory, or slip back into her crazed fortress of entitlement? As she made contact with the surface, a wave of amusement seeped through the assembly, the anticipation hanging like the finest mist before a morning rain. Surprisingly, her first stroke swirled into a thick loop that festooned our former battleground with personality. If anyone had been on the fence about whether she'd blanch into a paint horror, they surely couldn't deny the vibrant streak emerging before their very eyes. Delighted gasps filled the air, nudged into unison by contagious laughter. Maybe, just maybe, our dear Karen was on the precipice of becoming a boulevard of funky expression. "Go, Karen!" someone screamed, followed by a wave of applause that could have shaken the heavens. For a brief moment, it seemed like the mirror of her stubbornness had cracked, allowing a glimpse of the playful woman who might have slid into her chair more frequently than she realized. Was this transformation taking root? How glorious it was to watch entitlement crumble in the face of vibrant surrender. And alas, the once chaotic art day was taking shape, not just as a community event, but a blessing of self-discovery played out in vibrant hues. What awaited us next in this dance between chaos and creation? The crowd erupted into raucous laughter, each spontaneous cheer fueling Karen's newfound audacity. It was as though the universe had conspired to unleash a watercolor warrior within her stiff corporate shell, and I could hardly believe my eyes. With every stroke of the brush, splatters of grape purple began to clash with bright yellow and electric teal. It was the kind of beautiful chaos you'd only find at a kindergarten art class, mixed with a rock and roll festival. And here we were, reveling in the creation of a masterpiece born from a corporate titan's initial dread. Sam stood beside me, offering a commentary that could steal a stage. If this doesn't go viral, I don't know what will. Someone call the art world. We have a contender. As her brush glided across the fuselage like a young Picasso experimenting with modernism, Karen's guarded expressions began to melt away. By the time she boldly swiped at the blank canvas of my plane for her third stroke, I half expected a flash mob to materialize as an ode to her liberating brushstrokes. Let it out, Karen. Feel the brush. Embrace your inner artist, I hollered, summoning the preposterous vision of her leading a parade down Fifth Avenue during Art Week in New York City. The absurdity of the image made me chuckle. Can you imagine? Here comes the famous artist Wexler, raising her design degree in the air and demanding to speak to the curator. Initially, I had thought my mission was simply to share photos of Karen's attempt at community bonding, but now it felt like I was documenting the glorious renaissance of entitlement turned free spirit. As her strokes became bolder, the audience began clapping in rhythm, turning her existential struggle into this glorified block party vibe. "This is better than wholesome tea on a Saturday, people," Sam shouted, grinning widely. Who knew that Karen would transform from a bat wielder versus a plane? Isn't that going to make an epic headline? To a bona fide artisan embracing the unexpected? It felt as if a magic wand had been waved in the air. And suddenly Karen wasn't just a well-dressed executive. She was a whimsical creative, transforming dull gray shadows into splashes of sunshine. With each lively flick of the brush, the crowd's encouragement hit harder than any roller coaster thrill. People began chanting, "Art like you mean it, Karen," and I was left gasping for breath between epic spurts of laughter. Who would have thought that a woman armed with corporate attitude could go from swinging a bat to swaying her body with finesse and creativity? By the look on her face, she had forgotten the tension of the broader world unraveling around her. There she stood, appearing to groove to an imaginary beat, joyously smearing paint across the plane's surface, while channeling all her repressed feelings. Who knew she had a hidden passion for abstract art? Maybe the airplane would be as famous as the Sistine Chapel of corporate America. "Karen, tell us, will this masterpiece be on the office wall of fame?" I teased, eager to keep the giggles flowing. Sam joined in. "I see a new career path for you, the entitled artist." The crowd's laughter heightened to a cacophony of joy when she playfully shot me a glance over her shoulder, revealing a sprinkle of paint in her hair, a vivid green fragment dancing like confetti atop her professional armor. Would it transform into a community stigmatized by her unique mark? Who knew that public ridicule could be so liberating? In this moment, she embraced the chaos, unleashing a side previously contained beneath a perfectly ironed suit. As the afternoon sun began to dip lower in the sky, and shadows crept across the painted tapestry of my plane, I reflected on how transformational moments can arise from the most unexpected places. Karen had evidently showcased her bravery and spirit, crafting art with triumphant strokes, and perhaps more importantly, memories, with a glorious blend of laughter and imagination. I could see our colorful craftsmanship wasn't just about the paint on the plane. It was more about savoring the flavor of life's unpredictability. What was once a chaotic circle of entitlement and distress had morphed into a vibrant community canvas, a collective celebration. In those frantic hues, a confession emerged. Would we see Karen again, the once feared majesty? Would she rise again, perhaps next time with her own paintbrush in tow, as the herald of joy and creativity? As the event came to a close, and the sunset wrapped the pitiful plain in a surreal glow, I managed a deep breath, realizing I'd inadvertently rekindled a playful spirit in the corporate warrior, and that was the most triumphant victory of all. Should we all face our entitled moments with humor, where every stroke becomes a brush with madness that transforms lives? Absolutely, and I could hardly wait to share my breathtaking footage with the world.